sidewalks,
We can schedule. I don't know.
emergency trees, and let people go instead of trying to fix up one building for $40 million.
He's not gonna be here later.
$50,000 to $100,000 to fix up one of these houses. It brings a lot of tourist trade. It really does.
You think so? I think I'm getting hard of hearing. What did you say is for tourist trade?
Antique shops and such.
All right, I'm calling the order of the Minneapolis Government Study Commission for Tuesday, September 24. Meeting will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
would you mind calling the roll, please?
Mr. Duncan?
Here.
Ms. Eccles?
Here.
Mr. Flaring?
Here.
Ms. Reed? Here. Mr. Cooks?
Here.
Vice Chairman Fiore will be late, and Chairman Hiccup.
Here. Next on the agenda is public comment. Any member of the public wishing to make comment on the agenda items for tonight's meeting, now your opportunity. I guess there is none. Next on the agenda, brief discussion and timeline organization for the study of home rule. This, if we look back at our minutes or our notes, is the last meeting in September and the last meeting we were scheduled to do the study of the current form of government and identifying any deficiencies. We have a pretty full slate tonight. I think everyone recognizes that. I would probably be very surprised if we got through it to everybody's satisfaction in 2 hours tonight. I know Bev, you had sent in a suggestion for a potential early speaker, and then that will probably help us at least get the next phase rolling. But do we want to try and, I'm opening it up for discussion. I think we're more or less on schedule, but I just think we're going to bleed a little bit tonight into next month.
I kind of expected that, so I came expecting it to be longer than 2 hours.
Well, and then that's I guess maybe we plow through on the 2 hours and see where we are, and if we have to decide to bring or finish it up at the first meeting in October, do that. And then, but more importantly too, I think we need to start getting that next phase organized. Bev, do you want to share what your thought was? I don't know if that got circulated or...
I was at a separate meeting. Phyllis Garhart, who's the borough Tyrone manager, approached me about her interest in sharing her thoughts. And Phyllis actually worked for the city at one time, so she has some general knowledge of the inner workings of the city. But also Tyrone is a home rule community, so I think that she could bring a couple different perspectives to some of the information that we've been already studying. So I had suggested maybe having her speak early on.
I mean, she's close. It's somebody with some experience.
Suggesting that for the season?
No, I think for the, even the next meeting or at least early on in the next phase.
I spoke to her today, and she said she's willing and able to be here. She just wanted to have an idea of what exactly you wanted from her. And she can do what, I said, well, they're basically going into the school. They really need to know a lot about home rule. It's the home rules phase of it, or studying it. But if you have something specific she would like to know, but she said she can be here.
At the next meeting?
Yes.
So actually, we're not on a strict schedule like a moonshot or anything where we have to have something accomplished by December. Where are we?
Are we trying to get it on the ballot?
Well, the ballot's not going to be, earliest potential ballot, I think, just going from memory, is spring of 15. I think we have a decision that just doesn't work another way. The 9 months where we have to make the initial decision. I think we were sworn in June, so technically we would have to March, I believe. So I think you're probably right. It's just, we set that timeline, and to the extent we can keep it, I think it's a decent plan.
I think, from my point of view, it'd be great to hear everybody that we want to talk to and stop us. And I would not artificially constrain our meetings just because of the schedule if we had that much time.
My only concern is that May would be a primary election, and there isn't a very high voter turnout.
May of 15,
Or May of
May of 14.
14.
well, it can't be on by May of 14.
No. I think the question, well, that's throwing it off in a different direction here, but fall of 14, if we want voter participation, it needs to be fall of 14.
Right.
I mean, it's gotta be.
I'm just going by the timeline that
Yeah.
we passed, so I'm all in favor of getting it done faster if we can still do a good job and get it done. I said May 15th because I think that's what's on the timeline.
I think we're referring to that we have to have an internal vote that we do just within our commission about whether we're going to proceed to
Correct.
write a draft.
And as I recall, we have 9 months to do that. And if we choose to go forward, then we can take 9 months to draft the document.
This is the timeline that was in Michael Foreman's packet. Is that the one that?
Now, there was
Not the
one,
one
I
that Dave-
felt one that even Dave put together that we had voted on at one point.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is kind of what I remember. This is 6 months, which I was thinking would be along the lines of December, maybe January.
So if we vote, however we vote, if we would vote to go home rule, it would have to be then placed on the ballot, and the voters would have to decide whether or not they
Yeah.
agree with that, and then we would continue forward with the actual writing of the charter.
No, if we vote to proceed, then we would write the charter.
Okay, and then once the charter is written, then the voters would
Then
say
we
yes or no.
advertise and publicize it and all the education for the public to make a decision.
Thank you.
He has a flow chart that has it in 6 months, but then he has a point down here that says it needs to be done by the 9th month. So I think maybe there's some difference between ideal and legality.
There's a slide that I'm remembering that was blue
Yeah.
and it had the timeline.
I'm communicating with the cloud right now, but it ain't working. Technology is wonderful when it works, but
You said,
I'm not
on
getting
the
my
record
slideshow.
next week. That's what
Well, in any event,
Well, for the next couple of meetings,
Right.
we'll just accept the fact that if we choose to talk to more people, we will do that.
and everyone's okay with that, so and then the only other thought that I think is worth bringing up is, does everyone believe it's worthy to bring DCED back, hopefully Mike Foreman or somebody, just give us their data, the information they have. My thoughts were giving us a list of all the communities that are in home rule, who are in home rule and under home rule, and under home rule in Act 47, in home rule but not in Act 47. And so we can maybe start identifying the communities, the leaders in those communities, other sources of information to talk to during the next phase. If someone has a better idea, I'm more than willing to listen to it, but my thought was let's lean on DCD to try and get some more information out of them for the next phase.
I did ask for all that information too.
Oh, did you?
Just waiting. He said he needed a timeline, and he said to give him as much time as possible. I said we needed it by our next meeting in October.
Okay.
He might have it before then, but
There may
He's
be
working
something
on
else
it.
we might want to consider as well. Amazingly enough, the legislature has decided to take on Act 47 and may modify the rules that govern Act 47 here very shortly. It's hard to believe that they'd actually do it in a couple of months, but it could surprise us. I really doubt it, though, in the fall session. Fall sessions don't generally do much, but that's on the agenda right now. There's a bill proposed to modify Act 47 to allow increased taxation.
You referring to the articles in the paper?
That, and it's been talked about statewide. I think they're talking about, you know, the abyss that there are so many municipalities in because of Act 47, and they want to try to give them a bit more leeway to come out of it.
Well, Bob, I can't remember, what kind of taxation were they talking about?
They didn't talk specifically. They were talking about loosening up the constraints that are held to right now. So they were just going to give it a go, and that's exactly what they were hoping to get done. You know, give us communities that are in 47 more leeway to come out of it.
Yeah, the frustrating, without getting too far astray, I found it odd in that article that they were going to create a means of, you know, allowing for some growth and prosperity, but the second you came out, they're taking it away.
Exactly.
Didn't make any sense. But here it is, Dave. Yeah, we had this, according to the timeline in the slides that we had adopted, the business model. The plan was to do the vote in December, either proceed or to end. Proceed with home rule or to end. I think you're right. We still have some time, but we just have to be cognizant that if we're going to slip a little bit, let's do it now and try and still hit that December target, I think. Especially if 2014 is a real goal, and I think it's not a bad thought to do that. I mean, we don't want to slip too much at all. All right, so you'll update us on DCED, Linda. Thank you so much for that help. Yeah. And maybe we'll see at the end of tonight about whether it makes sense to bring Phyllis in for the first meeting in October, or wait till the second, depending on how much we think we're going to go over. Is everyone good with that? Thank you. Adoption of the August 5 meeting minutes, the August 20 public hearing minutes, and September 9, 2013 minutes. They were all circulated electronically today. Do I have a motion to adopt those? And a second?
Second.
Thank you, Karen. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We move on to the interviews, and is there any need to defer from the order that this is listed in? Does anyone have a scheduling issue, or do we just plow through this? I know the Vice Chairman is very hopeful to hear from Omar and Joe once he gets here, so.
May I suggest that we have a timekeeper if we actually intend to get through all the speakers?
Well, that's fine.
So, I mean, what if Frank goes first and he consumes 45 minutes?
You planning on doing that, Frank?
Absolutely not.
I may have a scheduling conflict with the next meeting,
Yeah.
the very next meeting, so for me, it would be beneficial if we can hear from the city controller, and then Omar, and then Joe.
Yeah, I think if we go through as ordered, we'll probably get the most of that, and we can always arrange. You're not going to be here at all the next meeting?
I don't believe I can.
I understand what you're saying. It's just that I think some of the other people on the list are going to be quick, and it's silly to ask them to be coming back for a very short amount of time, whereas those guys, we're going to keep y'all here a while.
Well, let's plow through it and see where we are, and recognizing the time. Councilman Harry, you're up first.
The question is, will I get a role? And the part that intrigues me is the ability to design our government, to decide what we need, what we don't need. To that point, the ability to maybe combine services. There's some communities that combine fire and police, communities that combine fire and codes. We used to have that ourselves here. And maybe even the ability to combine a fire department with a highway department, between highway department and mine. In such a speaking to the point of Act 47, one thing I did hear today is a 5-year limit on Act 47, and then either the city would have to leave or be disbanded as a municipality. That any of these taxes they would give us in the short term immediately would take away. And they're going to give us a short-term benefit, and then we would go back to Act 47. So the logical conclusion is, at some point, we do need to raise our taxes. We have to do it in such a way that we raise the lifestyle to attract people, but not raise taxes, say like Johnstown, where they added no other services, and the people were down. Our taxes need to be kept low, but they've been kept low for so long that I think we've neglected our infrastructure. One of the biggest complaints about the city itself is it's ugly. And however, business-wise, that's what I hear. And I try to get people to quantify that. I never get a really good answer that satisfies me, but I think that's something that we need to work on. And, people worry about tax base leaving, but our taxes are based on population so much, because over half of our population has left in the last 50 years. I think we have to one of the things that, and that's why one of the reasons I'm for home rule is because it gives us the EIT tax that allows us to raise taxes in such a way that we can do it in a moderate way, but still control the bottom line. Mainly, we have to keep pace with our neighbors and still, make Altoona a better, attractive place with a reasonable tax. I don't think that home rule will fix everything. I think it may even cause more problems in short term that we figure out, but it may help us kick the can down the road another 10 or 20 years.
Thanks. Any questions for Councilman?
The things that you're talking about changing, like, can you be specific on one thing that you would change with home rule?
A lot of problems are with the third-class city rules. They're more administrative problems. I think Joe and Nick will speak better to that. That would help us a lot. There's just silly things like advertising, where we have to advertise more than the township does. We have to wait longer periods to do ordinances, have to be introduced and advertised then, and then they have to be re-advertised once an introduction is done before they can be accepted.
My understanding for that was that, for Public Works, the budget for that, and you guys can tell me differently, was $25,000. So we're talking about $25,000. And I know it's an inconvenience. What I'm wondering is, a lot of things that I've heard through these different hearings is suggestions that are being made that could be done with a local ordinance that wouldn't necessarily need to be written into a local charter. Could you speak to that?
Not from the administrative side. The third-class city rules is the state rules, so we have to follow that. And it states for that advertising that we have to do it that way.
Correct, but would you agree that that's $25,000 out of a total city budget of?
Yes. In the long term, it's going to be what services does the residents of Altoona need? I think we've neglected our infrastructure. We should be paving a lot more roads. basically catch up. And to do that, we're gonna have to raise a tax to do that. And right now, short of reassessment, we're stuck at where we are. And even if we, sue the county tomorrow, it's gonna take 2 to 3 years to get it, that change. Is reassessment necessary? I absolutely think so.
Now, not to play devil's advocate, but I guess to play devil's advocate, you said what the residents want. If we go home rule, it's not their choice anymore. Their taxes will go up.
I would agree with that. But you have to pay for the services that you want. If you want a fire department that's fully paid, you have to pay for it. If you want the police the size that they are, you have to pay for it. Would I like to even, realistically, should we even expand the police force? Probably. I think we could use a few more police officers. But we don't have the means to pay for that at this point. I mean, to your point of the 25,000, well, the 80% of the budget is personnel. The question is, how can we figure out how to use the personnel at the max benefit to the end consumer, the taxpayer? And I think that's why it could be changed to home rule.
If there are no other questions, we'll move on to AC and Frank. Are you guys going to speak together on a subject separately, or are you speaking as controller as well as?
Why don't I speak as chairman of the party, and then Frank wants to do before or after, and then I'll stick around for any questions or any questions. Controller was controller.
Step on it. Either one of you guys want to go first? Mr. Stickle.
Okay, the question was posed whether or not we should consider increasing the salary for city councilman and mayor in particular. I'm sure that everybody on the council got into this for the money. It's been $300 a month for councilman, $400 a month for mayor for, I don't know, 10 years, 20 years, for over 20 years. Probably since the form of government has changed. Nobody wants to vote themselves an increase. I want to, but, politically they don't want to. And they voted for the next guys and they don't want to vote for somebody else. Now that being said, it's who wants to go through the headache of public grief. You get your name blasted and never in the newspaper, of course, but in the media and the radio. The mayor and current mayor enjoys getting this picture in the political cartoons, I know, but sometimes they're not most flattering. You get stopped in the grocery store. Sometimes I know Mark Guys talks about, sometimes it takes him hours just to get through. Mayor Hippo, I know his daughters were constantly frustrated that they were with him. They couldn't go anywhere, that everybody stopped them to share their concerns about city government. At a recent meeting, a recent city council meeting, there was what shouldn't have been, in my opinion, a horribly divisive issue. A lady literally threatened to stick pins in a Michael Fair voodoo doll. What price do you put on that? $300 a month hardly covers gas to go to meetings. It's not 2 council meetings a month. It's a number of subcommittee meetings. It's driving around looking at neighborhoods. It's driving around looking at issues of dilapidated houses, or meeting with constituents, or so on. For the last 5 or 6 years, we've been a member of the Pennsylvania Municipal League, and some councilmen, if they're able to attend, if they're able to take vacation time from their work, it's a greatly beneficial organization, we learn an awful lot from them, but, there's a cost involved there. Now, that being said as well, I'm not sure that raising the salary is necessarily gonna help us attract more or better candidates.
You see, not to interrupt, but can you comment on whether you think the current form of government is, as it's currently structured, and I realize salary is part of it, believe me, but beyond that, does it make it easy to find people, speaking as chairman, or is there a change that we can do?
I don't think the form of government means as much to a potential candidate. Potentially, if the mayor had some additional powers. I'm trying not to put my own personal thoughts in here too much, but the mayor really is a glorified councilman. And I don't think that we should at all look at returning to the type of government we had before, where you had highly paid department heads because you had a lot of turnover, and you have, every time there's an election, you have turnover, and you have somebody who maybe doesn't have any experience at all in that particular field. But I do think that potentially if the mayor had some additional responsibilities, some executive authority, probably supplemented by a fairly strong city manager who still run the day-to-day operations. A lot of people think that the mayor's job now even is just to run the meetings. While that might be true, there's still a leadership role there, and I think that some additional responsibility is important, at least for the mayor's position. It might help too. I mean, we've got some great candidates and some good councilmen, but it's really very difficult sometimes to get people just to serve their community. I mean, that's anybody who's elected currently, and most of the people have run, either have a big ego, and I suppose everybody in politics has somewhat of an ego, or they really want to serve their community. And some get into it for one reason, and the other one takes over.
So are you thinking that going home rule would actually enhance the level of leadership of the city government?
I think that it's a potential possibility. I'm not convinced that we couldn't. I'm not convinced that through the current form of government we couldn't give the mayor some additional responsibilities.
And how would, in your mind, how would home rule open that window of opportunity for enhanced leadership by you, the mayor and council?
I think when you write the charter, you spell out some additional duties that the mayor might be responsible for.
And increase their salary, perhaps.
Yes. If you want somebody really to devote more time than is currently the case or currently required, I think there should be some additional compensation. But if you went from $300 to $1,000 a month, that's not an insignificant amount of money to lay out. And Rebecca mentioned $25,000 not being a lot of money, but I walk around City Hall turning off lights. We've got automatic light switches, but I still turn them off because it takes 10 minutes to shut them off. Sorry.
Yeah, so if we want increased leadership in city government, particularly with the mayor, do you think that, we talk about dollar figures and all that, but I'm kind of thinking differently, does it need to go from part-time to full-time? Or do you think that we can get the kind of leadership role that we want and need out of a part-time position?
I think we can still get it out of part-time, because I think if you take somebody who's full-time, then you're really looking, it's going to have to be somebody who's either retired or leaves their business or leaves their occupation and tenure and benefits and so on, and pick up benefits at the city presumably, but I don't think that making it a full-time position really helps. And then the salary would really have to be commensurate with that. So I don't think that full-time would be the way to go. Okay, I'll stick around if you want to hear more about my perspective from control.
Frank, do you want to share your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the biggest problem that I see from the whole process is that the general public doesn't even know, what we're doing, what's going on. I mean, they talk about home rule charter. You go down the street and you say to somebody, you know what a home rule charter is? Well, and I think the thing that we've got to take a look at is letting the people know that we want to change the way the city is run. Because we have a mayor who's a figurehead, he doesn't even have an office at City Hall, and that's an embarrassing situation, for God's sake. The mayor of the city of Altoona has to use his basement of his home to conduct business. I think that's embarrassing. But there was a time in city government when the council people were in charge of departments. The mayor generally was the police department, and somebody had fire, and somebody had the maintenance department. Do they do that today? If one of the citizens of Altoona has a problem with the fire department, whom do they call?
Generally, if they call councilman, they just pick one randomly.
But I mean, can that councilman do something?
Per se.
Well, I'm answering yes, can he do something?
Well, the councilman should go to the leader of the company, the city manager.
Yeah, now, did you ever try to get the city manager on the phone? You ought to get rid of that answering service, for Christ's sake. People want to hear a voice. I called this city hall so many times, even trying to get a hold of Linda. It's maddening. The citizens want to be heard. And that's why I'm wondering about the whole city changing the whole government thing. What's the biggest problem we're facing? You talked about it. We don't have enough revenue to do what we have to do. And this changing the form of government going to help us do that? Yes, because you're constrained now by third-class city code is to how much money you can raise from certain sectors of the people. So the thing I think is so important is to let the people know that if you want a good, clean city, if you want a city you can be proud of, if you want a city that is going to grow, you've got to pay for it. I know taxes are a dirty word, but there's not a single person sitting here today who can say to me that I can live next year, the year 2015, in the same level of lifestyle that I had in 2013 and 2014 without getting some sort of increase in revenue. Everything we consume goes up. You guys know this. Water, electricity, all the materials and supplies you use. And yes, 80% of a government expense is people, because that's what government is. It's people running. So you can't end up with 30% people to run the government. You face the fact. Do people want roads? Do they want police? Do they want firemen? Do they want good education? You got to pay for it, folks. So why don't we start trying to stem the negativity about government? People are saying bad things about government. And that's bothering me, because government is the way we survive. And if we can't get the citizens of this commonwealth, of this city, to understand that these people are doing the best job they can, but their hands are tied because they don't have the money. They don't have the resources. So we've got to get the people to understand that changing the form of government is number one, because the current form doesn't do it. Now, as a political party, my goal is to try to encourage people who would be willing to take that challenge and to go out and run for office and tell people just what is I'm going to do for you. I'm going to do this, do that, but I can't do it without revenue. Now, how many people running for office are going to say, I'm going to raise your taxes? We have enough whack jobs now in government who run on positions that are opposed to government. They're here to destroy government. I'm not going to use names of parties and so on. But there are people today whose goal is to destroy government. Now, do we want that in Altoona? No. We've got to talk to our people. Tell them Altoona can only survive if you help us. It's going to take a few more bucks, because you can't continue your standard of living without some form of increase in money. And it's not a dirty word. I mean, it's something that we have to face. And as far as the type of government, there was a day when I came down to 1961, there was a strong mayor and strong city council that were paid salaries. They each had departments and they all responded accordingly. Then in '87, the citizens decided, let's go with a new form of government. And Joe Weekland, God love him, has done the best that man can do under the circumstances of a declining interest in government, declining revenues. And yet, the people who run for office, run full well knowing that they have no say in how government's run. Because I don't know if the mayor can hire people. Can't do that. City council can't hire people without Joe's approval. So do we want a representative form of government that says these guys who are giving up their lives on a monthly basis for 300 simoleons, are we going to give them a little more dignity and respect and opportunity to be a part of how the government's run? I mean, I think the whole issue is so important to make the people understand. Look at the turnouts we've had in elections. L.A. Wilson, my dear friend, but AC said to me tonight, what do you think the turnout's going to be in the fall? I couldn't tell you. I will tell you one thing, the level of apathy and lethargy is pandemic. If we get 25 to 35% of the voters come out, I'll be singing the praises. How in the heck can you run a government with 25% of the elected electorate running to the polls to vote? I think the biggest chore we have, you have, is to convince the people that if you want good changes in Altoona, you're going to have to change the form of government, but it's going to cost money. Tell them up front. Don't beat around the bush. I think that's so important. And I think focus on the positive things. We've come a long way in Altoona. Some of you remember Lance Hoffman. Some of you, well, I don't know, Bob does, I've been around a while, but Lance Hoffman did a program for TAJ 5, or it used to be 5 in those days. And he went around and had crews with cameras, and they drove in Altoona from about 6 or 8 different ways to come in. And it wasn't a pretty sight. And you would talk about beautifying the city, But we can't do those things if we don't have money. We can't make the street. Let's convince the people that to beautify your own property. We'll help you if we can. Don't be hesitant about coming to council meetings. How many people do you have come to a council meeting on a regular basis? Unless they have a problem, right? If they have a specific issue, we ought to have people crowding down the council rooms. Pollyanna, I know, but if we can't give people interest in our government, we're going to continue to go down the tubes. So we're going to try. Money, AC said it, I don't think any amount of money that we can look at in the context of what we're trying to do is going to help. And the only other thing I'm concerned about, when you decide to present to the city the vote, and they decide to go with this charter, how are we going to get every single member of the community who wants to vote? How are we going to get them to read that charter? Now you might say, I don't know how many pages it's going to be, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, but how are you going to get the people to read it and know it? You have to find some way to do it because it's off and on if you don't. If you say, well, come to the city hall and get a copy, the people are going to say, well, thanks a lot. You ought to hire a bunch of kids and give them 1,000 each and go knock on doors and give it to people. It's what it costs. Who said 25,000? I think it's a monumental chore. But if you want it done right, the people have to know. They have to know what's going to come because it's better to know up front than to find out later and say they did another job on us.
So why, if we inform people about the tax increase, why would they vote to implement a rule?
If you want to save the city of Altoona from total destruction and default, do you want roads or do you want to have to go out and buy a jackass and a slip?
On the eve of destruction.
I helped write that.
No, it's it.
Certainly inspired.
We gotta make that, but we can't prejudge that they won't. learn or they won't know. I mean, we've got to let them know, the good with the bad. But the charter has to be given to everybody. And don't call them into city council, don't call them in Elton High School. They got a park, God forbid, 100 yards away, you know. People want conveyor belts to take them into meetings nowadays. But you've got to get the word out. I have no doubt that people are gonna vote for a change in city government. I don't doubt that at all. It's the development of the charter and getting it to the people. And that means going out. Go to the Fifth Ward Community Center, meet with people there. Go to the Juniata Civic Center, meet with the people there. Go to these different community centers where people, go to some churches. Talk about it. I think it will work, and I really truly think it can, and I'll do whatever I can to help get this thing going and approved. Any other questions?
The only comment I'd make to that, I know the vice chairman who's not here has been very worried about that element of publicity and how to handle that. And I can tell you, I know he's done an awful lot of work trying to identify how other communities have done it. And it's crazy if you look at the scope of what has happened throughout all the communities in Pennsylvania have gone down this path. And I'll let Richard explain it to you in more detail, but there are communities that have 5 full-time staff members working on this. We're not going to have that luxury, but there are an awful lot of novel ideas and a broad number to try and disseminate the information as much as we possibly can.
And you ought to keep track of them. Keep a listing of all the meetings you're going to have, all of the means that you're going to have to dispense the information, and times and dates and places, so that down the road if somebody says, well, I didn't know about it, give them a sheet of paper, say, here's where all these meetings were, where were you? But just don't provide them and then not keep an anecdotal record of how many were there and where it was, and then we can always say to people if they complain, well, you didn't go. But I'd like to talk to Richard about that, because that is so important. Anything else?
Any other questions for President?
And I'm not going to run.
I will keep that out of the charter. Thank you very much. You're certainly more than welcome to stay as we proceed through this. Time is it? You want to comment as controller?
I'll make a few comments, then I'll entertain questions and stick around as some may come up. We are heavily constrained by the third-class city code. I remember Councilman Rieger, every meeting we would count how many times he said Washington and Harrisburg. Because everything that the city wanted to do at city, we were restricted. We couldn't do it because of Washington and Harrisburg, mostly in Harrisburg because of the third-class city code. Not all of those restraints are bad. The third-class city code is designed to cover third-class cities all over the state, and every community in the state is different. Some of those things are union-related, some of them are tax-related, some of them are pension-related, how we handle our pensions, how we fund our pensions, how we report our pensions, how pensions are incorporated in contracts, how those benefits are distributed. So there are some things there. A lot of the administrative things we have to do just because of third-class city code. Even simple little things. When Mayor Scherf was inaugurated, yes, it was the year that Mayor Scherf was inaugurated, and there was a discussion about the inaugural ceremony, and Mark asked if we could do it at 6 o'clock in the evening, sometime like that, because he and some other folks have to work, and we wanted to take a day off for a spring ceremony. And the third-class city code actually requires that it be held at noon. Now, that's just a silly little thing. Why that was written into the code, I don't know, but I guess that's a term the term expires, and you might go without a council and a mayor for, a few hours, and what happens then? I gonna be simple things like that that we would be able to change. So, I think there are a number of things, issue by issue by issue, that could be looked at. A lot of things in 35 City Code that are probably good. There's some guidelines. Some of the protections put in, like, I don't think anybody in state government expected that any county would ever go 55 years without reassessment. So putting in a 25 and 30 mil cap didn't seem like a big deal to anybody. I'm absolutely in favor of reassessment, not necessarily for an increase in taxes, but you can't have a fair and equitable tax with a 55-year-old assessment. You've got some people that even currently are paying more than they should in comparison to people that are not paying enough. So I think that a natural consequence would be some level increase in revenue, but just the fairness and equitable nature of an assessment that is just completely unfair. Michael said it would be 2 or 3 years. I think it would be more like 5 till we actually saw any increase in revenue because of the time it takes to reassess. So I still think that's something the county is even commissioners who ran against reassessment are talking about, we're going to have to look at that. Whether the school district or anybody else sues for it or the legislature thinks them, or have to do something there. But I think that'll come. I think there also might be some redevelopment opportunities. Joe can probably speak more to that. There are some things that were kind of hog-tied with the rest of the code and how we use money. It's probably more on the federal programs, the CDBG money, that really, we have some dilapidated neighborhoods. I hate to distinguish, but some neighborhoods with some poorly constructed homes, some poorly maintained homes that have gorgeous sidewalks because that's where we're allowed to put them. And then we have, some middle-class neighborhoods with some better maintained homes that have fallen down sidewalks because even though they have a little more income, they still can't afford to replace their sidewalks. And the city also can't do it because they don't fall into it. Mayor Hippo talked for years about the fact that you can't get anywhere. You can't walk anywhere in the city. I, about a year ago, moved to Garden Heights, and I live less than half a mile from my office. I live very close to Save-A-Lot and Martin's and Bank, and I can't walk to any of them without risking my life. I'm not sure that a change of government would allow us to do some of those things, but those are some things that will attract more people to the community. It's not just about bringing more dollars in from the resources that we have. We have to have some economic development and give people a reason to want to move here, which will increase our real estate values. It will increase our tax base. It will increase the earned income levels to draw more people here. And we have to do that somehow. And so if through your studies you can determine that we might be better able to do that through a homeowner charter, then I think that there's some safety measures that need to be put in there. We wouldn't want council just to go hog wild and do anything they want, but not too restrained either. Give council some more flexibility. So I'll entertain questions now, or I'll stick around if you want to ask later.
Can you name something from the third class city code, something not minor like the mayor getting a non-rated 12 noon, that is a major obstacle that could be eliminated through a homeowner charter?
Well, I think Michael mentioned the way that we advertise, and I think that $25,000, and I think our budget for advertising might actually be more than that, but that's not an insignificant number. When there are a number of significant issues that might be $100,000, 1,000, 5,000, you add them up, you know, that makes a pretty big dent in it. So, you know, that's one of the areas. I don't want to get too much into the minutia of, you know, I was thinking about some pension the other day that we're really kind of stuck with. You know, we might be more eligible for a 401k style defined contribution as opposed to a defined benefit plan. We might be able to write something like that into the charter, which could save. I mean, that's a lot of the taxes that are paid and paid by non-residents as well as residents are for our underfunded pension.
Do you think there might be a little bit of wishful thinking involved here, that home rule, we hope
Yes.
home rule could address more issues than might realistically be expected?
I do think that there are a lot of people, and I can't speak for anybody on this board or even for myself, I only speak for myself, but I do think there are people that think, oh, if we go home rule, we're done. We can raise the tax limit to whatever we want, we'll have all the revenue we need, and we'll be at 47 and things will be good.
Now, you're the chief financial officer of a multi-million-dollar company.
Actually, I'm more like the auditor.
Okay, so you're the auditor. You know the numbers, all right? You also know the demographics of the community and the geographic limitations. If the market or our customer base is not going to change, why would we think that changing the form of government makes any difference?
You're right. You're 100% right. The only thing, there are a couple things, and let me speak to that. The median income in the city of Altoona is $12,000. So half of the people working in the city of Altoona don't pay the local services tax because they don't earn $12,000. They don't pay retirees. Most of the retirees, and there's a number of other folks who don't pay any earned income tax. They might pay federal income tax. They might even pay some state income tax if they have significant investments, but they don't pay any earned income tax. They might be paying some real estate tax, but they're probably getting, many of those seniors who are lower income, they're getting a property tax rebate. So, you know, in some ways they're not paying any taxes. And those are the same people who want to pay fire department, want to pay police department, want their alley plowed, not just their main street, but they want their alley plowed, you know, 5 minutes after it snows, and they require the most services.
And are you suggesting under home rule that we would get more money from those people?
No, I'm not, because you might get a little more in real estate tax, which I'm not really a big fan of real estate tax anyhow. I think it's regressive. I've already paid for my property, I don't want to pay for it again. Earned income tax, which I think is a much better tax, it's a fairer tax. The more you make, the more you pay, but wouldn't get any from those folks. I would look at home rule as a short-term fix in the way to potentially address more revenue, but if it would allow us in many more ways to increase the tax base by attracting more people to live here, by attracting more businesses to locate here and hire people.
And how would home rule do that?
I'm not sure.
Okay. I'm not either. That's why I'm
Yeah.
trying to figure out how this would benefit.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't. I mean, I know there are some restrictions in some of those things, but I'm not sure that home rule would fix it. If it would, that would be the reason. That would be the biggest reason I would support it.
Do you know the numbers for what the average local tax rate is in the city compared to the average local tax rate for across the country and comparable cities population-wise?
Real estate tax?
Total local tax.
Total local
Doesn't
tax.
matter what you call it.
We're probably lower.
Okay.
I mean, that's
what I'm thinking, but I'm wondering whether you actually know the numbers.
it's difficult to say because we have so darn many different taxes that virtually no other state in the union has. Only 2 other states have a local income tax. They don't have the local services tax. They don't have the occupation privilege tax, the occupation flat tax, the per capita tax. They don't have all those things. They don't have the business privilege tax. They don't have the mercantile privilege tax. They don't have the rental privilege tax. And then the licenses on top of that for businesses. So even with all of those combined, I'm not sure. For an average citizen, the state and local taxes combined are probably lower than many of our neighboring states. I mean, if you look at New Jersey, their real estate taxes are 5 times as much. Although there are other municipalities within Pennsylvania where it's a lot higher as well.
What's the income compared in those areas?
Generally much more. Generally much more.
Hey, Steve, could I ask you, you quoted 12,000 as the median income for Alpena. I sit on the Southern Alleghenies Workforce Investment Board, and it's been repeatedly said to us that it's 32,000
Median income
for Alpena.
or average income?
The median.
That's
Okay.
annually.
That might be household.
No, that's
Maybe a
household.
household would be 30,000. Individual would be 30.
I mean, that's maybe 2 years old. It was a couple of years old when the local services tax, when it was occupation privilege and then went to emergency nursing services, to local services. We were levying 10 on everybody, and if you made 12 or more, then you went to 52. And the legislature passed a law denying or canceling anybody under 10, under 12,000. And I did a study, wrote a letter to the governor, and he actually vetoed the bill because we had already passed our budget and was going to cut significantly into that revenue. But then, I said, well, it's kind of late in the year, and we're just finding out, and our budget's already passed, so they did it earlier next year. And they've got us another year.
I've seen you at plenty of city council meetings. I assume that you attend all of them, or the
The vast
of them?
majority, if I don't, if it's during tax season, I watch it on TV.
Is there any fear of the unknown?
Sure.
Meaning, there are times where you think, I'd rather stick with what we have than what we should end up with?
I think there's always that fear. I fought vigorously for Act 32, which is the consolidated earned income tax collection. I also fought vigorously to establish a tax bureau as opposed to hiring a Centex or part-timer or anybody else. I sit on the treasurer of the board of the PCC, and we've just been going through our 4th budget process. It was a breeze this year, and we're probably going to carry over in excess of $200,000. But the first year, when we didn't know how much we would collect, we thought we would be able to collect it. We thought we would have the right software. We thought it would be easy. We thought we would need X number of people. We thought, but we didn't know. It was frightening to think that I really staked a lot of my reputation on this is the way to go, and a few of us had. And it turned out it did. We've been incredibly successful, which means that we've been incredibly successful for all communities in Blair County. But sure, you don't know. You don't have any guarantee.
Just 2 follow-up questions. You mentioned Centex. Does Centex owe the city any money?
I don't believe so.
Okay. Could you say for sure? Or
No, I couldn't say. I'm 95%, and remember that 89.32% of.
And then my next follow-up question would be to both of you gentlemen, actually, because you are involved in party politics. You're the first that I can remember that has clearly come out and said that there are constraints of the third-class city code now. We've had several city personnel that have been in here and said, third-class city code, yeah, there's some things that we can change, but really it doesn't really affect what I do. The government works today. My fear of the unknown is that we have a process in place and that it's difficult and it's not easy and it's not politically expedient a lot of times, but that's why the process is there so that things don't just get written down very quickly. My fear is that could happen. So what is your feelings on the process of introducing a piece of legislation or ordinance and then what it has to do in order to get passed?
Well, my feeling is that what has happened over the past, since '87, has brought us to the stage we are right now. So I don't think you have a choice but to change. Because to continue in the same form of government, you're going to get deeper and deeper because the constraints are still there from the city code, the third-class city code. You can't amend it unless the legislature does. So you've got to take a chance. Now, that doesn't mean that the whole new charter the citizen will vote on is going to be here in perpetuity. It can be changed again too after a reasonable period of time, say 10 years, and we've seen no discernible increase in the quality of the city and so on, or the maintaining the standards. You can always change it. But my feeling is what we've been under since '87 has obviously brought us to where we are today. Unless you can prove me wrong.
Well, from '87, we had a strong city manager.
Yeah.
Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah. I'm not saying the strong city manager is the problem, but we changed it then from the strong mayor, strong city council, and honestly, gosh, I don't remember as much about why it was done then.
Well, they
I
wanted to
truly
make it
don't.
more business-like, I understand.
Well, and obviously making it more business-like hasn't proven successful.
Well, I'm not sure there's a direct line between those two concepts.
Well, but the point is, again, you change. When things have deteriorated, regardless of why, you can't continue to do the same thing.
Okay, so I'm okay with, yeah, we gotta change something. But, rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic doesn't really solve anything. And between home rule and Act 47 and whatever else might be coming down the pipe, I continue to wonder, well, how is it gonna make any difference unless a lot of rich people move into the city of Elton? I just don't understand how all of these issues are going to be any different a couple of years from now.
And to follow up on that, you were saying that, people want more services, they have to pay for them.
Yeah.
He's saying that the majority of the median income is $12,000. These folks are not paying taxes as it is.
I don't think that's not a correct figure. That means that there are as many people in Altoona making less than $12,000 as there are making over $12,000.
How many do you think
That's
are
not-
on a fixed income in the city?
According to city data, 2011, 35K is the average household income, 18K is per capita.
Okay, so, pardon me, break that down to me. How many people in our city are living on a fixed income? Out of the 49,000 that are
Depends on
here.
how you define fixed
With
income.
Yeah, mine's broke, I don't.
Yeah.
How
It's
with
fixed,
income
like it's the
taxes,
same amount.
if you have retired people or people on, say, Section 8, they're not going to pay into that. And cities naturally seem to attract that type
Would
of
agree.
clientele.
Well,
And I don't think it-
wait, someone on Section 8 is paying into property tax because it's built into the rent. I mean, they may not personally be paying it, but we are collecting it, right? I mean, so,
Unless they're at, Pleasant Village or a place like that, that's tax exempt.
or is that tax exempt? They are?
My fear is, Frank, that you're saying everything's going up and everything is going up. The price of gasoline is going up, the price of bread is going up, the
Everything
price
you
of
consume.
milk is going up, and so of course, the city's expenses are going up. How much can we really tap the people that are still living here for extra services? Perhaps the answer is to cut services until it gets to the point where they can no longer accept that, and then they would be willing to pay more.
They're at that point.
But do the people know that?
See, the thing, in deference to what David
Goodness
said,
knows they will.
we're not changing the seats on the
Deck
Titanic,
chairs
we
on
are
the
changing the Titanic to a new boat. The basic issue here is, after all the rhetoric, what's the biggest problem we have? We don't have the money.
Right.
You can slice it any way you want to. And if what we've been doing for the last 30 years has not given us the opportunity to generate the income we need, and we've got to find another way to generate the income we need.
He touched on it, and so did Heather. I think that the monies that are generated by those that work in the city are the ones that need tapped more, not so much the ones that live in the city, but the ones that work here. There are quite a few that work here that don't live here and draw a lot of funds out of the city.
Well, and we're already capping them by 0.35%.
Just goes away.
Yeah, it goes away under home rule.
But that's a state issue, not anything we can do anything about with home rule.
But it is
or not.
with EIT, right?
Well, I think,
It is with the earned income tax under the home rule.
yeah, I think that we're starting to get into a lot of questions which we're probably going to be directing to Omar. I know we're touching on a whole list of things that I did send to him beforehand, and maybe we should just go on and go to that.
Can we take like a 2-minute break? So I can visit the waiting room.
It's 8:06, we'll be back at 8:08.
Keep official time.
So do you know though, this is a different way to come up with the number I asked you. Do you know what the average budget is for cities across the country that have a population?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Because taxation fundamentally equals the budget, right?
Right.
That seems like that might be a easy numerical number.
I think it is. You just have to say, what's the cost of living? And the cost of everything was higher.
Yeah. Because, because we hear people say, oh, our tax code is in here, we have the highest taxes around. And
With the highest tax rate,
whatever.
but we don't have the highest
I
taxes.
know. But the point is that we need to fight these numbers and stop these political,
Lowest tax municipality in the county. Not even including other cities, we're the 8th lowest tax municipality in the county.
How many municipalities are in the county? Okay.
We're in the bottom third in the county.
Right, and here's the thing about that is,
You should come up with a affordable.
Tyrone, Hollidaysburg, 8 of them.
right, and we should be actually near the top, because,
Now, local taxes,
well, no, I know, but because we're a city as opposed to many of the other municipalities and the counties are not cities, a city should fundamentally be at a higher tax rate than say, some township.
Okay, we are back at order, or whatever resembles order. And I do think we're at a point where we want to maybe turn it to Omar, since we have an hour left, or a little less than an hour left in the meeting. Omar, pick a hat. And,
I have some thing I'm going to circulate here for I have enough for all the members here. I don't have enough for everybody. Some of the members of the commission had provided me with some questions in advance to, I guess, facilitate and maybe expedite our discussions. I wanted to start out with just a couple of background slides here and pages related to what I do as a finance director and HR director. The former city manager here, he can just talk about better than anybody, certainly, what it entails being a city manager, and also a lot more experience as a coach. So again, I just wanted to focus on those two departments, finance and HR. Just real quickly, as the finance director, I prepare and administer the city budget, develop and oversee a capital improvement plan, prepare, present, and analyze monthly financial statements, oversee and confirm payroll for all city employees, maintain regulatory compliance, oversee all revenue collection activities, oversee all organizational investments, and oversee purchasing activities. As the HR director, I direct all city recruitment and retention activities, source, screen, interview, and hire qualified candidates for employment citywide, negotiate and administer 5 collective bargaining agreements with 3 separate unions, provide oversight and administration of all employee benefit programs, administration of all unemployment and workers' compensation claims, ensure compliance with all legal and regulatory standards, oversee and administer all employee discipline, and actively involved in any employee grievances that may arise. And I just, again, I was provided with some questions. I just go over those, some answer to some of those. Mr. Flaren had provided me with a number of questions, and Ms. Green had provided me with a number of questions as well. I responded to some of Mr. Flaren's first, and I got to tell you, I did not respond to any of the questions that dealt with tax fairness or anything that really I thought required a legal opinion as to what we can and can't do or how that might arise. But just some of the questions, we talked in a couple of the introductory questions about reassessment. And one of those was, would the city have legal standing to sue the county for reassessment? I think it certainly would. And this has come up earlier in our conversation here tonight. Reassessment would take time, and it's my understanding it would be closer to 4 or 5 years until it would actually go into place. And then once it was in place, there would be limitations on what the tax increase could be. I think it's like 5% or something like that in the first year, and then incrementally thereafter. My personal opinion, for whatever that's worth, is that the county does definitely need to reassess its real estate taxes, and that because the city's primary source of revenue is real estate tax, I mean, it's limited, it's up against a cap every year. I go into court and testify why we need more money than what we can actually get because we reached the 25 mil cap. And if you go in and convince the court that you need the money, they allow you to raise it to 30 mils. But again, those mills are based on an assessment that occurred before I was born, and I'm 51 years old. You also had some questions about tax-exempt properties and the breakdown. I don't have the breakdown, but according to information I just received from the county, tax-exempt properties total almost 32% of the city's total assessed value, and we do not determine tax-exempt status. The county does.
Is that because we don't do the assessment, or is that just because of law? Because the third-class city code says, we could do the assessment. So is this just because we choose not to do the assessment, or even if we chose to do it, we still could?
It's my understanding, again, I'm not an attorney, but if we chose to do the assessment, we would then make those determinations.
Could you provide us with a list of the exempt properties in the city? I know the school district did this years ago. Would it be possible for this committee to see that?
Yeah, I can tell you for sure that the 2 biggest exemptions are the UPMC Altoona. I mean, those properties held by UPMC Altoona and the Altoona School District make up the vast majority of the assessed value that's exempt. But sure, I can do that. Another question that was given was the ability for us to have a sales tax. The city cannot, no municipality can levy a sales tax. Philadelphia and Allegheny counties have a sales tax. I believe it's a 1% sales tax. No other local tax body that I'm aware of has the ability legally to institute that tax. Mr. Flaherty, you have mentioned taxes on healthcare, health services, alcohol. They're not permitted legally. And I think there was some reference earlier to some pending legislation that may allow for, was in the article in the paper referenced tax on alcohol. I know, for example, Allegheny County has a drink tax, but we are not allowed to have that sort of tax.
Is that only under third-class city code? If we went to home rule, we'd be able to implement that tax?
So it's actually a local services tax. Excuse me, a local tax enabling act. The city and most municipalities fall under what's called a local tax enabling act. That only allows certain types of taxes. Those would be earned income tax, mercantile tax, business privilege tax, business privilege rental. Those sorts of taxes are allowed through the local tax enabling act.
So if we go home rule, can we do?
No.
It makes no difference if we go home rule.
My understanding, yeah.
I thought there was an amusement tax as well.
Yeah,
There's a bedroom tax for the hotels.
None of the hotels are in the city.
They're all township.
You're supposed to have one guy to be a hospital.
Disagree.
I think that's a county tax.
Yeah.
Another question related to, and I think these were some of yours, permit costs and licensing fees. We cannot levy costs legally in excess of what it costs for us to provide those services. So if, for example, the rental inspection fee that we charge, we have, every 3 years provide an inspection of rental properties, and people have to pay that fee every year. The city was sued and was in court and defended that probably about 7 or 8 years ago. And we had to really prove that our costs were at least what we collected in revenue from that tax, or from that fee. So just the rule of thumb is that we can't levy a permit, charge costs or fees that exceed the cost of providing the service.
So I guess my question was, maybe I didn't word it right, do you think that the current costs that you're charging for all these services do adequately cover your costs at the city? Based on, obviously your labor costs go up and salary costs and those types of things.
What we do every year is look at those costs and try to analyze our costs, and if it is feasible, we do increase those. I believe the Act 47 plan calls for a certain indexing of those fees and permit costs in the coming years. That's certainly something we address on a regular basis.
Were they addressing that because they didn't feel they were adequately priced at the moment, or were they addressing that because of other reasons?
I can only guess as to why they thought that, but I'm sure because it's a legal firm that wrote the plan, that they would, I assume that they would know that we can't do that. But yeah, I would think that the costs of, gasoline goes up.
Right.
Wages and benefits go up. Those sorts of things, yeah, and we would try to index those increases to increases in costs for permanent licensing.
I think if I can interject quickly, our planning director, over the last probably 2 years, reviewed an awful lot. Well, I guess don't say include Joe, reviewed a lot of our fees, permit fees, and license fees, and so on. And they increased a number of them slightly right before the plan was written. So that was kind of done. And then we also just adopted an ordinance for fees for fire services that we should be able to recover from insurance companies. And that's something new, and that should, I don't know what the number.
So do I take all that to understand that right now we're pretty much charging fee licenses that are right at what our cost of providing service is.
And the second bullet point there on that page, really I was referencing the cost recovery that we just put in place. Again, that was part of the Act 47 recovery plan. It's a new recovery of costs. I mean, it's fee, but it's a recovery of costs.
Right. You know, when
That's-
Dave was here, I'm sorry, I think he mentioned some things that are in the third class city code, such as sidewalks and things like that, that we don't typically charge the property owners. And I thought he mentioned that there were some things like that that we do have the ability to charge for, but we're not currently assessing.
He was referring to assessment districts or.
Yeah, we could go into, my understanding, we could go into any neighborhood and charge, set up an assessment district. I don't necessarily know the process for doing that. It's certainly never done while I've been here, and I don't know that it's been done since the 1950s. But, to do a neighborhood sidewalk project. Basically, we assess individual property owners for that action, the cost of providing the sidewalk. So that, I think that's part of what he must have done.
Yeah, I'm just thinking in the spirit of the conversation of cleaning up the city, the whole money and revenue issue and things like that. We may have been able to do some of these things in the past and not charge the property owners, but are we getting to the point of crisis now where we need to start looking at our flexibility and, charging people, not that we want to, but it may be something that we can do to continue keeping our infrastructure up to date and those types of things, so.
Then the last question I addressed here is grant writing, and the question whether the grant writing may be of value. It may be of value, but the way we do it, as we do with many things in the city, is on a decentralized basis. Grant writer is going to write grants or administer grants. If it's decentralized, then the people that are doing it are doing more than just grant writing and administration. And that's what we do in the city. And it places that application and administration in the hands of what I consider subject matter experts who perform many of the functions that would be related to the grant. And particularly, I think Tim and certainly Janice do very good work with the grants that they are involved with, both in the application and administration process. But it's information and related directly to what they do for a living. And so they're very much on the ball as far as what they need and what's needed during the application process and administration of that grant. These are just some of the benefits on the next page, some of the benefits I see, potential benefits, I guess, from home rule, and that would be to increase local decision-making capability, potentially increase local control, certainly a modification of tax caps. I put modification here where I think that would mean probably an upward movement as we kind of addressed here. But I know that there's some reference to increasing one tax and decreasing another tax. I don't know how that would work. That's certainly would be part of a charter, should we so choose to think that home rule is beneficial and decide we need to write a charter. Heather, you talked a lot about limitations of the third class city code. The home rule charter and going home rule would certainly have the potential for reducing those limitations. And I gave some examples on the next page of limitations. Certainly we've talked about the advertising requirement. It's also bidding requirements. You have to bid after a certain expected level of expenditure. There are hiring restrictions in there about who you can hire for a certain department. They may not be necessarily bad restrictions, but certainly there are restrictions. There are limitations on schedules and sick time usage, or sick time that certain employees have every year. One of the biggest things is it mandates a defined benefit. Defined benefit plan is what most people typically see as a pension. And it does not allow, at least at this point, what we would call a 401k type plan to be really put in place for employees.
On that subject, do we know if there's any, and you may not know this offhand, we may find it in our next phase, is there any home rule cities that do have a defined or a 401 style program?
I do not know. Okay. But and again, I'm not talking necessarily about home rule, what home rule has, but what the limitations of the code are.
Okay. But I don't know that we've heard testimony for sure that there's any option. The next level of government regulation may also dictate some sort of defined benefit plan.
I have a question, because this is, I think, the third time this has come up. Are you inferring that a defined benefit plan is more expensive to provide a benefit than a 401k is?
Well, it defines the benefit. It doesn't
Well,
define the contribution. It defines what's actually paid.
Right,
So,
okay.
yeah, it would be.
You're saying that it is a more expensive way to provide the benefit. Can you provide the numbers for that? Because, you know, I know you can't, because frankly it's not. And, but I understand that people may say that it may be a way to cut costs, but what they're really saying is it's a way to cut our cost and get the benefit at the same time. But because I think we need to be very careful about this, is that it's one thing to say, well, you know what, we can switch to a home rule and we can change the benefit, which saves the city money because we're just not going to provide the same level of benefit. And if we want to be perfectly honest about that, that's fine. But it's another thing to say that we want to do this because this is a cheaper way to provide the same benefit. And that's an entirely different argument.
No, it's a different benefit. It's a
Right.
reduced benefit.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so,
That's a reduced
yeah,
benefit.
okay, so we want to be,
Necessarily.
Almost.
Depends on the investment.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Yeah,
that.
it could be a higher benefit.
It's a risk transfer.
There you go.
You transfer the risk from the company to the employee, which is in the favor of the company.
My question about schedules and sick time for employees, so when Mr. Holland was here, Chief Holland was here, he was talking about that under the third class city code, firemen have 21 sick days, and that's something that we could potentially change. My understanding is, though, that that is something they use to negotiate in deals between me and the city. Meaning that if we would say, okay, you're not required to have 21 sick days, you're only required to have 11, that would reduce their bargaining power with the city.
You know, we could bargain that with them, but you would set a minimum. You could set a minimum, and then we could bargain that. You know, they could say, hey, we used to have 21, and we can say, hey, you won't get this and you get that. You know, it could be.
If we reduce it and it's reduced, then how does it increase their bargaining power?
The floor is reduced.
The floor is reduced, but
You can still bargain to give more. Right now, we have to give at least 21.
Correct.
We could say we have to give 11 or 18.
Does it typically scale in the favor of the city versus, again, against the employee?
It would,
However set it up.
however the contract works through negotiation.
Okay.
I mean, they actually could agree to fewer days, but they would be in violation of the third class city code. We can negotiate that, and they're not likely to do that, but we could.
I guess the point is there that there could be no cap set by government statute, and the city will negotiate without those artificial limitations on negotiation in place, same as with tax code. I mean, we could get rid of the tax cap, but that doesn't mean they're going to raise the tax to 100% of the assessed value. So it lets the free market, in a sense, set where that is instead of some arbitrary numbers that are thrown in by the third class city code, although it'd be within the purview of our charter to set our own limits if we so choose as well. We didn't want to let it completely up to future councils, ordinances, and negotiation.
Pardon me, I'm working on a slideshow on behalf of our committee, and I'm thinking one of the slides is gonna look like that. That hopefully home rule either increases revenue or decreases expenses. Would you be willing to put dollar figures on these? So that we could, when we communicate the message, that for instance with taxes, and I would ask the same thing for the people that talk about the potential for home rule to generate additional tax revenue. Okay, how much? Because it seems to me that from a business point of view, this might come down to a simple decision of, well, does it or does it not make it better financially? Because if we had enough money, all the other problems would go away. We don't have enough money. So we need to either increase revenue or decrease expenses. And I keep hearing that home rule might do this or might do that. Well, I don't know that a business decision should be made on a promise of potential future income or decreasing expenses. So would it be possible to put figures?
Some of those possibly, other ones, well, hiring restrictions, that's really not a dollar and cents issue, it just restricts who you can hire, it doesn't really say.
And how would it, okay, so how would home rule make any impact?
It would just, you could potentially eliminate that restriction, that's not a dollars and cents issue. But it's my understanding that home rule is not necessarily just related to dollars and cents.
Okay, so home rule might make the process of running the city better, even though that can't be quantified right now.
Yeah.
Okay, and an increase in local decision-making capability. Now, well, I'm not even sure what that means.
Well, I mean, you right now, if you're restricted by the third class city code, we've talked a lot about that. You and then the voters would have the option to adopt a charter that puts more control in the local government.
Okay, so that's number 2, local control, increase local control. How about an example of what we would do if we were home rule?
Well, I mean, I can give some example of these limitations we're talking about within the purview of the charter. We can write that, but then by referendum, our charter doesn't have to be fixed in place going forward. It can be changed by either the city council putting a referendum on the ballot to be ratified, or a citizen can circulate a petition.
Okay,
to get something.
I understand that, I appreciate that, but increase local control of what?
Of your government. If a citizen or this board who would potentially, so they choose, write a charter, you could write a charter that mirrored the third class city code. But if there's anything, by changing the scheduling, the sick time, any of the things that are talked about in here, you as a representative, you as the representatives of the citizenry have the opportunity to write a charter, and then the citizens have a chance to vote
So
on it.
if we wrote a charter that enhanced our own ability to run our business,
Yes.
the city government, then we could write something that would increase our control
Yes.
of our own business processes.
Yes.
Whereas right now, they're kind of out of our control. And I'm not sure I understand how that would, or how that all works, because I don't know enough about our city business of running the city. But it just seems to be, we've heard from many, many individuals who said it's going to be better under home rule.
I can't say that it's going to be better under home rule. I can say it, and let me go back to your Titanic example. I don't think that changing the form of government was where we went wrong. Because, tell me if I'm wrong, we were under third class city code before the change in form of government and after. So it was always, has always been the third class city code. It was just the style in which we adopted, or we govern. So there may be some tweaks that we want to do to that style of government, but it gives us more control if you so desire. And I don't know enough about it either. I can only talk about the experience what we've had, you know, in your research where you might go forward. But I think if there are some things where we could make it more efficient, that I think Heather mentioned that some previous panelists indicated that they're operating under a third city code. They don't think it makes a big deal, or they work within it. If we maintain what we have, we'll make it work. We may not make it work as well. We may not make it work as efficiently, but we'll work within the guidelines and the restraints that we have. There are things that, you know, we're in the process of doing. Part of it's under the recovery plan, and part of it's just a matter of good common sense in the way you operate a business. If, with, you know, input from as many people as you can, and I think in your next phase you'll find out from people who are actually in a home rule charter, or who have gone through the process, or maybe who looked at it and decided not to, you'll find out what they're able to do that we're not able to do.
And I apologize if I put you on the line, because you're not under home rule. But it seems to me, if I'm a businessman and somebody presents me with a business plan and says, well, it might do this, and it might do that, and it might do that, I'm going to say, well, show me the numbers and tell me exactly how that works.
So I think that's our responsibility as this commission in the next phase to determine if home rule is going to answer any of this. I don't know that folks operating in the city under the current form of government are any way expert to say.
I agree.
Yeah, so.
However, they do seem to be in favor of it.
Well, I think what we're hearing, I think what we're hearing is, perhaps some of the things Frank said, is there's a desperation to the point that
In other words, any change is going to help.
Well, I'm not saying that. They're saying change clearly has to happen. The question I have is this the right change? And we don't know yet.
I'm
We
not
simply
adverse to
don't know.
rearranging the deck chairs if it makes us feel better.
Speaking back to, just to clarify something that Frank said, he said our number one problem was the loss of revenue, and that is correct. But the direct correlation is the loss of population. The reason we are decreasing in revenue is because our population
Yeah,
has
there's the same
continued
roads are
to
there,
decline.
and everything else, so you've got to
We've had
make
the
up.
same economic development corporations around the city for the last 4 or 5 decades. Okay, so in my mind, increasing revenue, I've spent time in downtown Johnstown. It is nothing compared to Altoona. I've spent time in foreign countries where it is dirty. It's nothing compared to Altoona. Altoona is a very clean city. Once you travel to a place like that, you realize you come back. Johnstown is a ghost town. Altoona is not. Right? So I think that part of our mission is to change the mindset of the people of Altoona, that Altoona is a gem and that it can be refurbished. My next question to you would be, when the mayor was here at the last meeting, he said that we would have surplus by 2016. Is that true?
Probably have surplus this year.
Okay, how's that working out?
No, I mean, that's part of the plan. Part of the plan, we call, you know, the increasing of revenue, and the restriction on, and that's the other thing, getting back to your slide there, and some of the discussion earlier, it's not a matter of, well, we need to increase revenue or decrease costs. You have to do both.
Yeah.
That's what we've been trying to do for a very long time. But we're capped on revenue. It's really the cost side that we've been stuck with trying to reduce. I'm sorry, could you repeat?
You're under Act 47 now, and you're going to have a surplus this year?
Yep.
Okay, well, does it get better each year under Act 47?
Doesn't get better. Well, let's put it this way. Without it, we're running huge deficits,
Okay.
which we can't fund for much longer. That's why we entered Act 47. So, yeah, in the sense that it's increased revenue primarily through special purpose tax, the increased EIT tax. That's the primary vehicle by which we're collecting additional revenue.
Commuter tax. The commuter tax.
Well, it's EIT, so it's on residents and non-residents, higher on residents. Yeah, I mean, that's what's really leading to what we hope will be a small surplus.
And that goes away, though.
Somebody's sick, so we're gonna put them in the hospital and we'll give them nutrition, but as soon as they're ready to go, we'll kick them out of the hospital, but they're not allowed to eat anymore.
And the additional revenue is $2 million.
No, I'm supporting the hospital. I mean,
Oh, okay.
I'm saying that-
I
I'm
misinterpreted.
glad the state's not running the hospitals, Dave. For God's sakes, that's what we be doing. You know, the states are, the other comment is, you know, we keep saying we have this problem, we keep saying the brakes are broken on our car,
Yeah.
and the state's saying, well, you can't fix your brakes, but we'll get you a bigger horn. It doesn't make any sense.
Well, your medical analogy is very good because it's actually the responsibility of the patient to get better, so to speak.
But if they can't get better on the outside under the current rules, what we're seeing is under Act 47, some minor changes were made to the point where you're able to have at least a minor surplus.
By the end of the 5-year plan, we're back to zero.
Yeah.
Zero meaning balance,
yeah.
or zero meaning we're in a $1.5 million deficit again?
Zero balance.
So as I look at the benefits that are listed here, and it sort of goes to the $5,000 for advertising stuff again, is a lot of these things, they're not fundamental game changers. They're, when we look at 80% of our expenses is people and salary and benefits, they're not game changers. A lot of this is just cutting around the edges and that kind of stuff. And so it seems to me that if we really want to do something that can help the city grow its way out of Act 47, it really has to be about growth, that we have to do something that fundamentally promotes growth. And this is why, you've got the questions you did from me, and I'm going to ask because maybe other people here have, suggestions about it, is that one of the fundamental questions I tried to ask, and I asked this in lots of different ways, is whether we have property tax or whether we have earned income tax or whatever we're doing, whatever that is there something that promotes winners and losers in a way that it promotes growth in the city so that we grow our way out of this, grow the tax base, so to speak, but it promotes growth? Do you, and I don't know whether you're the person to ask us, maybe you can direct us to the person we should be asking. What kind of thing do you think is going to promote that growth more?
Well, Heather, you talked about economic development, and we've also talked about the reassessment. The current assessment, Joe, you might remember this. The Blair Med, that whole big project,
Station Medical Center.
Station Medical Center, has not generated under the current assessment the type of revenue that it would, if we were really under a more modern assessment. So that really hinders economic growth and how it helps city function.
So let me kind of phrase why I just started. Is Station Mall is underpaying in property taxes by?
No, they're paying what the assessment calls for. But the assessment
right,
is
but the assessment is unfairly assessing a very advanced, expensive facility.
And I'm just using that as an example.
Sure.
I'm not pointing them out because it's fairly recent.
But my question gets to this: if they were taxed more for if we were to reassess, and that's what a fair assessment would be, is that going to harm what they do so that we actually lose business? Or in doing that, and we do that across the board throughout the entire city, are we suddenly going to find that there's other places that are maybe right now paying too much taxes, and all of a sudden they realize, hey, we can grow and then do something and
that's a
do more.
county-wide issue, and that's why one of the reasons I would speak about the detriments of that is if you start raising taxes in the city higher than they are surrounding the city, it's only going to increase the flight from the city, both with regards to residents and businesses. And that's an issue that really needs to be addressed. The assessment is on a countywide basis. Part of, I think, the answer is regionalization and sharing services across municipal boundaries, but that's just not likely to happen. Unless there's a win in it for each side. It's going to be a win-win situation, and if it's not,
Or a perceived win.
Yeah.
I think there is a
Yeah.
win-win for everybody, but those who aren't on the verge of bankruptcy don't think they need it, because they're not on the verge of bankruptcy yet.
One final question. We have a capital reserve fund, correct? How much is in there?
very little.
Okay.
About $500,000.
I have a question. One of the things we haven't covered here, but we did cover extensively in last, and maybe this is for you and Joe. Two other areas that don't have as much to do with revenue and taxes, or maybe they can, is what are your feelings about the city manager form of government versus a strong mayor? We heard a lot of opinion on that last time. Current form of government versus a stronger mayor. Yeah, you make headlines too. Don't complain about yourself, man.
I guess I understand where the mayor is coming from. But the idea behind, I believe, the current form of government is to try to model a business. It's a business model. You have a chief executive officer who runs the company. He reports to a board of directors. Now that's a gross oversimplification in the public sector because it just doesn't work that way. But I do see the removal of politicization as a good thing in those issues. If you can run things on a more business-like frame, you're probably better off. I'm an administrator, so I try to run things in that regard, cost benefits, so to speak, as much as you can, but you can't in the public sector entirely. You're talking about people, you're talking about providing service delivery industry, where 83% of our costs are in personnel because those personnel deliver the services that really make up what we do as far as the operation of the city government. So I would not personally be in favor of any increased politicization of that process.
I guess the second part of my question is there any limitations with the third-class city code in how you have to structure that business? What departments you must have, what departments you can't have, what departments you can't consolidate? Is there any limitations within third-class city code, that dictation of the tree of your government, that home rule may allow you some more flexibility in how you could maybe streamline your business model within the city?
Yeah, Councilman Hare talked about, having a combined police and fire department. And I know I think that actually takes place in certain other parts of the country. It could, a certain home rule charter, if it spelled it out, it would allow that, I suppose, would eliminate that restriction of the third-class city code. But it's much more than just that. You can say it's going to happen. I think there was some reference to negotiation of that. Well, that's not going to go. Those two groups that really serve as the backbone of those departments, the unions that I'm talking about, are not going to just agree to roll over and say, make me a police officer, make me a firefighter, and I'll take on all these.
Well, it's not, the way I see it is not so much the money in the services, but the administration of those services. So for the administrative tree, is there some departments that could be consolidated that can't be right now under third-class city code, And with the size of the city, could there be potential efficiencies gained in the reorganization of the city structure?
Maybe somewhat, but I don't think it's any.
If they're pretty streamlined, you got this guy doing 3 jobs, so. Four, yeah.
I don't know where you're gonna go next.
Joe, do you want to make some comments? I mean, it's, is there something that, you've been sitting here, is there something you want to add to what Omar's touched on, or?
Yeah, there are a couple of things that I would like to comment on that have already been discussed to some degree here tonight. One of them is this idea of strong mayor versus manager. I don't think you want to look at it in that light. I can honestly say that in the 5 administrations that I worked under as mayor, in almost every one of them, the mayor complained about not having a larger role. I'm not going to use the word power but a larger role in the government. And I think in looking at home rule as a group is something you may want to examine. I can also say that your chairman should be some assistance, since he was one of those mayors who, in fact, I hate to use the word complain, but I will, of not having a larger role. So I think that's something that really should maybe be considered. For instance, in the borough form of government, I don't know if this is a good idea, but as an example, in the borough form of government, under the manager form of government in the borough, because of the borough code, which would be their third-class city code, the mayor is responsible for the police department. Now, that is, I don't think, a particularly good idea, but it is an example. I do know in talking with borough managers, that creates a lot of conflict at times, with that kind of control. But anyhow, I really think that's one thing that you may want to examine under the manager form of government, which I would, of course, strongly support, looking at the role in there.
I would have a counter proposal. I'd suggest that there be a clarification of roles, and I'm a big fan of the business model. And if you have a CEO, the chairman of the board, or the mayor, is in charge of policy at the board level or council. And I think there needs to be a distinction between what the board does and what the paid, knowledgeable leadership for the company does.
Then you want to keep the form of government, manager form of
Strong
government we have
manager,
now.
absolutely.
Yeah, you want to keep exactly what we have now.
Yeah, I do.
So
It's a business. It's
that's
a business.
the trade-off. And in talking with two chairmen, they see, they want to see a more active role on the elected official. And I can see the pros and cons to that. Being the administrator and the manager, I personally like the way it is. But I do relate to the fact that every mayor has complained, and that might be a strong word, but have registered concern that they don't have a more active role in the government. I don't know if there's a way that you can address
The
that.
hypothetical question you don't have to answer is, would you run for mayor now that you've retired, knowing the amount of control that the mayor has?
No, personally, I don't.
Say it,
I
Dan.
think it pays, what, $400?
Yeah. Well, and I think you've already kind of addressed this, is that it seems like the point is a mayor, the type of mayor we have now, it affects the mayor's ability to lead as a leader, and it affects their ability to create change or to initiate new initiatives or whatever based on direct voter input. So that yes, every they would campaign or something. There's going to be some.
Not necessarily. Our whole, at the time, gateway effort in the city, which started out as trying to get a group of volunteers to do exterior work on homes for people who could not afford it in our gateways. Staff, and this was instituted by the mayor at that time. That program was the mayor's program. He practically put it together, and staff implemented it. So that's an example of things that can happen. The bike trail, for instance, another example which was instituted by a mayor. Staff implemented once the mayor decided that that's what he wanted. Now, and it doesn't have to be the mayor; it can also be a councilman.
Could I interrupt? So those initiatives, and actually that would be a great. Maybe we should actually have you list some more of these type of initiatives. Were they signed off so that it may have been a mayor's idea, but were they all? I don't know the history. Did they get voted on by the council, and then that sent it to the manager to implement?
It
Or
got
was it, or
voted
did it go?
on by the council by way of funding, if no other way. That would always be the council role at a minimum. Their involvement in the case of the gateway, they were all pretty much involved. In fact, the council members volunteered to fix up one or more properties in the gateway at that time. So it was mayor-led, but council was involved and was very supportive. But the purse strings, again, the council would authorize the expenditures, so that is another role.
Are there examples you can give where mayors wanted to do something that council just wouldn't follow through on to send it to you?
The trash issue, the centralized trash issue. They wanted it, and after the councilman did it.
So, but every business deals with that kind of thing. Some strong leader has an idea that nobody else wants to do.
Yeah, again, the elected official, the role basically is as good as the elected official is. Both the individual and his or her ability to understand what is needed in the community. And I'm going to switch gears here real quickly as far as understanding what is needed in the community. I've always conducted what I call orientation for newly elected officials. What I would do would provide a full, more than a full day, but I would sit down and go full day, full day, full day. I would sit down and go half day, whatever I could do to accommodate their schedule. And that orientation was always enlightening to the extent of the lack of knowledge that the incoming elected official has of this form of government. They do not understand relationships with other community organizations. They don't understand the internal workings of City Hall. It is always, I'm always, even though I anticipated, I'm still surprised. And the other disappointing thing is the number of them who do not follow through to the end of the entire orientation. We set these meetings up, they come in for a half day, we set up another meeting, they cancel it, I bug them to come in, but again, the majority of them do not complete it. And I don't know how you get around something like that.
You make it public.
And don't do anything else. And we have councilmen here getting involved. It's up to the councilman to decide how much involvement they want to do. I mean, technically, you could sit at home and collect your $300.
Would you like to run a company like that, a multi-million-dollar company with a board of directors?
Well, hold on. Now, you can control that other part of it, what you expect the councilman to do. I can tell you, I was one who completed the whole thing. Councilman Butterbaugh did, Mayor Sherp did. Out of the 7 who are on there now, I know that us 3 did. The other ones I cannot speak.
It took me 8 full Fridays. I worked 10-hour days at my day job, so I could come in on Friday with Joe and with the different department heads, and it took eight full days, and that's just the first orientation.
But you were getting $300 a month.
Hey, I earned my 75 cents an hour.
But what you're talking about is passion, you're talking about commitment, you're talking about love. Saying that's not something that can be legislated. It's not something that can be written into a charter. What the parties need to do is work on finding better candidates.
And when you interview 20 people to be the mayor and you don't come up with one, what are you going to do?
Well, I wonder also with that, it comes back to if you want to be, let's take the really greatest way to look at it, someone wants to be mayor because they want to impact a change that they see, a vision on the city, but they don't have the authority to do that unless the rest of council is willing to go along with it.
We are a board. I mean, there has to be a consensus. So you don't want to give someone like the strong mayor all the power. What this board, what this form of government does is it separates it. We have to get 4 councilmen to agree on an issue, and then we can tell the manager, hey, there's enough consensus on council, please do this. And he will, because there's consensus. And if not, and then there's steps to correct that. The ultimate extreme is to fire him if he won't do what we want.
So Joe, pardon me, the reason you bring this to our attention, you brought this up, is that you are asking us in a way not to change the form of government, the strong manager.
That's correct.
Okay.
With the caveat of looking at the possibility of increasing the role in there. And I don't know if that can be done. I've talked to other municipalities and see what the role in there happens to be in other municipalities.
Just as a matter of interest, are there position descriptions for the mayor and council right now?
No.
There are no clarification as to duties or expectations, responsibilities, or accountabilities.
The option plan that we're under is what specifically sets the option.
Yeah, that's all that whole package. Which there's not much there. If you look at that option, there is not the option plan.
Are there position descriptions for the city manager
Yes.
and other officers in the company?
Yeah. All of which could go away by going away. I mean, could be rewritten by the Home Rule Charter.
Yeah. Are you in favor of Home Rule Charter?
I am, mostly for the revenue issue. To be very honest with you, I think the revenue issue is the most important issue with respect to...
And where would we generate additional revenue in the Home Rule?
Doing away with caps. And most likely the income, earned income. The earned income tax right now is, we collect 0.02 for distressed pensions. That, the 0.02 on a $50,000 salary costs the individual somewhere around $7.50 plus or minus. twice a month. That tax, however, generates, what dollars you count this one about?
$1 million a year.
Yeah, $1 million a year. So, the earned income tax is not that great a tax, but a small bump in that does generate income, and we could get out from under that cap. I mean, Tyrone, I heard you mention, the manager in Tyrone, they levy, I think, 1.9 earned income tax.
And that's only on residents.
Yeah, well, if you're home rule, you can only levy these things on, as you all know, on residents. So the ability to tax the non-residents to the O2 goes away.
Actually, this is maybe the last thing I want to share with you folks. My understanding that Michael Foreman stated that if you go with the home rule charter, that the Act 205 tax that we currently levy would go away. I discussed that with the coordinator, the Act 47 Recovery Plan coordinator, who sent me their opinion and their conclusion as of September 5th. City of Altoona may continue to impose the earned income tax on non-residents at a rate above the otherwise applicable minimum rate as authorized by Act 205 if it adopts a home rule charter under the home rule charter and option 21. But their opinion is we can still be able to levy that tax.
As long as you're under the Act 47.
Yeah.
Oh, even beyond?
I think that's what you're.
No, that's just,
So you go home rule and we can tax people who work here that don't live here at a rate we pick.
Which is
Under
the
their
opposite
opinion.
of what we were told.
Yeah, I
Right.
got you there, yeah.
That's not what we were told, right?
No, that is not.
Something that's come up a couple times, and this gets back to one of my questions about basically forcing the county to reassess filing a suit against them and perhaps joining with the school district to do that. I'm sure they would probably like to do that. I know it takes 2 years. We're saying that 2 years for the court case and then maybe 3 years after that before any kind of revenue changes occur. But it's certainly the way to have some fairness, fair taxation occur in the county and certainly in the city. It takes time, but if it had been done when we knew we were going into Act 47, we would already be through the court case at this point, and now we would be waiting on the county to actually do their reassessment. So every year and so I guess it's really almost more of a question of the council members. Why don't we do it? I mean, I know it takes time, but it's not, you got to start.
Because of political pressure on the electorate. If you would educate the electorate and tell them that if you live in a city, you're paying too high in county taxes, and your county taxes will go down,
Correct.
I think they would be for it. But there's that idea of we're eventually going to raise your taxes and raise them a lot. Well, but that's why we're elected officials. If I raise your taxes 10% and you hate me for it, you don't vote for me.
Right.
And you vote for guy B who says, hey, you raised your taxes too high, I'll cut them down 5%.
But who would you rather be remembered as?
Yeah,
Unless I don't think you're going to be a councilman.
I had a
political
promise
will right now on
certain
council.
people to go that way if certain things happened and they would make them. I would be for
As city manager and acting city manager, or do you recommend this? Is this a constant recommendation to council saying, we've got to do this, we need to do it now, every year we wait is another year we wait?
Has that been recommended?
I don't think it's ever been a recommendation that has been discussed, but I don't think it's ever been a constant recommendation.
All right. I just feel like being on this commission that there are several issues that council is just not having the political will to act on. And thank you for acknowledging the political
It's foolish for us
context
to
of
do
it.
it. It's absolutely foolish.
Well, I know that, okay.
And the people, that get the money should do it.
But then you're basically, we're being asked to do it. on your behalf.
The police
And then I
department
just
can
view that
legally
as
do
a-
it, the fire department can legally do it. That's
Yeah.
where the money's going anyway, and they
Well-
could do it without political,
No, so we go to
disruption.
something else that wouldn't be capped, it's gonna have the same effect, it's gonna, you know, only it's gonna have the negative
I
effects.
know
It's
the
gonna
fire
increase the
can,
taxes in
Jim,
just the city and not in the county, which is actually the one kind of thing that we really don't
I
want to
know
do.
the fire department can.
Our one
And they're the
commissioner,
heroes,
she
so I
said
mean,
that
who's
the city
gonna
has the
complain
ability
about
to reassess, we should do it. But the county shouldn't. Well, that was the whole point of my conversation with her, is it negatively affects the city if we would do it.
Right.
Right?
And their ability to do nothing has already negatively affected us. That's why
They're
we're
gonna
here.
be broke in 2 years anyways. They need to get on the wall.
Councilman Bierbaum, you have more to
Oh,
add?
I still say council doesn't have to do it. First of all, it's an irrelevant point anyway, because the county's about broke now anyway. So they have to reassess just because they don't have money on themselves. And that's really what has been going on. Nobody wants to do it. And I've talked with the different people that can do it, and nobody wants to do it, which is fine with me. I don't think our problems are money. You know, people have come to me, and churches have come and said, "Can we give money to the city?" And I said, "No." I said, "Don't." You know, that's foolish. Until we start having a situation where we can use our employees efficiently, why just keep throwing money at it? You know, the private sector, who gets pensions in the private sector? You know, look at the healthcare costs in the private sector. What government's going through now is what those of us in the private sector went through in the early 90s, when our medical costs rose up and nobody was there. There was no windfall for me to, I couldn't go to my boss and say, "Well, my medical went up $300 a month. You owe me $300 a month."
This sounds
That
like
isn't the way it
a
works.
race to the bottom. This sounds like you're advocating a race to the bottom.
No.
Well,
No,
sure.
but each employee, you have to, as an employee, have that responsibility of your own contribution, defined contribution plan.
So you would advocate that we, change all the benefits, whatever, but we're fundamentally saying, okay, we're going to give 10% across the board pay cuts. I mean, that's effectively what you're saying.
Not necessarily.
Well, it sure
Not
sounds like it
necessarily.
to me.
I mean, it depends how it works out and how you want to write the charter. But there's things that we do. For instance, you guys mentioned the 21 sick days. Why do firefighters get 21 sick days? Because it says so in the third-class city code. Why does it say so in the third-class city code? Because when the third-class city code was written, every time a firefighter walked into the fire at that time, he got pretty sick and needed a week off because he didn't have breathing apparatus that they have now. Now they have the equipment that when they walk into a fire, they have oxygen, they have water, they have a coolant system. None of this stuff was invented when the third-class city code was written.
What you're saying to me, and it's something that has kept coming back and back and back again, is that these are problems that cannot be fixed at the local level.
A lot of them can't be,
That
but some of them can.
some of them can.
And I say fix what we can.
Well, I agree with that, but in my mind, why is the state so in favor of home rule? And thinking about it, it's because it alleviates them, it removes them, they don't have to do their job to fix the third-class city code, to take up the Act 47, to look at what's wrong with it, and we're putting a Band-Aid on a gaping wound. And by putting that Band-Aid on that gaping wound, we're allowing the state to hold up and not do what they need to do for another 10, 15, 20 years.
But what's the alternative?
The alternative, in my mind, is to reduce services. Reduce services to the point that the people of Altoona say, we can't deal with this anymore. You want more people? You want better people living in the gateways? Okay, don't have any roads anywhere else. I live right along 8th Street. I have no worries. I know that 8th Street's going to be plowed. I know I'm going to be able to get to where I'm
There's a
going.
plow route, hope you live close to it. Because nobody else is gonna get plowed. You'll see it this winter.
I'm sure.
If we get several feet of snow like a normal winter, we will see it. And there'll be constant complaints, why did it take you 48 hours to plow my street? If we're broke.
Then maybe that's a great opportune time for council to have the vote to start a lawsuit on assessment. I mean,
I wouldn't do it.
Well, I know you're not, but, you know, anyway.
We're regrettably beyond time, but certainly worthwhile. Let me throw this out. Joe, have you had a chance to address is there anything else you want? Instead of dragging you back, I think we'll extend if you have some more things you want to say.
I think two things. One, in my opinion, and I think my opinion will bear out to be correct, that remember that the city of Altoona is a unique community. And you touched on it a little bit, but in comparing with Johnstown and other communities. Number one, we're out in the middle of nowhere. We're not in the northeast, we're not in the southeast, we're not in the southwest corners of Pennsylvania where everybody lives. We are out here in the hinterlands by ourselves. We have an extremely low cost of living compared to other communities. The entire area is in and of itself. And I have seen people brought in that were going to save the community over the last 40 years from the outside. And this is, I'm going to generalize here, and I probably shouldn't generalize. But I've seen so many failures because they could not adapt to this community for whatever reason. And I think whatever you do in designing, if you design a form of government, which is what you would do under home rule, keep that in mind, that when you say yes, but in Reading, in Bethlehem, there is not a community out there that we can compare ourselves with, which is frustrating, by the way, because anytime somebody wants to do a study, I think you asked about our taxes, how do they compare to other communities? Well, there's not a community out there that we really can compare them with that is the same as we are. And in planning, when I was the planning director, and doing planning studies, that's one of the first things you want to do is start comparing what's going on in other communities and trying to compare the city of Altoona with other third-class cities in this state. I don't know how you do it. I really don't know how you do it because we are unique. And I think you should keep that in mind when you're talking to other communities and comparing the city with other communities. I don't know if you had received copies of the Pennsylvania Economy League studies that were done over the last, I don't know, help me out here. Well, wasn't one done in town?
First one was like 90.
But anyhow, if you look at those studies, they compare the city of Altoona with other communities for taxing, for income, for what have you. But I've always questioned the value of those comparisons because these other cities are really not a lot like we are. But I throw that out. That is a personal opinion.
I understand exactly what you're saying, but Act 47 had no problem comparing our city to 3 other cities.
It gets done. You know, I know it gets done. All I'm saying is
Every company gets benchmarked for eventually.
yeah. Well, but keep in mind when you're looking at those comparisons, you know that we are rather unique. The only other thing, real quick, is a lot of discussion on economic development and even the Act 94 plan. The bottom line in that plan is what they're saying is if you're ever going to come out of Act 94 or Act 47, you need economic development is what's going to save you. Well, I'm sorry if that's the case, I don't think we're ever coming out. If that is the case, I don't think we're ever coming out. And I will qualify that statement by saying that we have, not maybe or probably, we have the single best economic development agency in the state of Pennsylvania. We really do. Morasco and Company are the greatest. And I'm still saying, if economic development is what's going to pull us out, we have problems.
So-
Which is a very bleak, by the way, situation.
Why do you say that?
I just do not see in the city of Altoona any economic development that we would need to pull us out. Now, I'm a regionalist, and that's why I say Altoona Enterprises does a great job. And our residents utilize and are, they're the employees of many of these jobs that are created in the county. But if you're looking at a tax base in real estate, it ain't gonna happen.
That's a good question, and you may not know. There's a lot of talk about rehabilitation of downtown, and we've heard about young professionals and students, that kind of people with disposable income. If all of that happened, and we saw a change in downtown and the industry, commercial enterprises that come with suit, is that going to be a magnitude of a tax base to take us out of Act 47, or is that not enough?
I would
And I don't
guess
know whether
it's
you
not
would-
enough. I would guess it's not enough.
My question would be, if Act 47, if the fear about Act 47 is that it's going to deter economic development in the city, but yet you're saying that economic development in the city is not going to happen.
No, I didn't say Act 47 would deter economic
I mean,
development.
is that the perception that anyone else has? That Act 47 will prevent businesses from coming to this community because we are in a distressed city status? Then why is Act 47 bad? Other than the fact that we can't pay our bills.
Because it gives all the control to the state. He talked about being eunuchs under Act 47, we are. Because they say, this is what you're going to spend your money on, this is the plan, and you have to accept it. Once we accept it, we go into Act 47.
Yeah, in their assessment, we couldn't do it, so they'll do it. That's what it comes down to.
Yes.
So if we want to get out of that, it's up to us to pull ourselves out of it. And I'm not enjoying your optimism based on 40 years of experience in the city, saying that if economic development is the criterion for success, it ain't going to happen, is what you're saying.
That's my opinion.
And is that because of our socio-demographic profile? And
Well, for a couple of reasons. Number one, we are the service providers for the county, if not even greater, a larger area than that. We are the dumping ground, I hate to use that term, but we use it for the poor in the county and probably the surrounding area. Look at our cost of housing. Where can you go and buy a adequate housing for $30,000? I'll tell you where. You can do it in the city of Altoona. And for $60,000, it's really amazing what you can buy. But we provide all the subsidized housing, except I think for one development, there may be more than that. But we provide, for all intents and purposes, all the subsidized housing in the county. I'm not saying that's bad, but I'm saying that then requires the accompanying services. And it's a service economy. It's a public service economy. I don't know.
well, it occurs to me that if the city of Altoona as a business is non-sustainable in its market, then I'm not sure what the outcome will be.
And neither am I, to be very honest with you.
I'm not as pessimistic. I think Joe's right. If economic development, the the way it's been approached is the only solution that we're gonna look at. But I do think that there's some, I mean, there are some things already happening downtown that 47 is working with. You know, we're fortunate to have a great partner with Penn State. You know, even Meds and Eds, you know, there are some great opportunities. Some of those are tax exempt, some of them are not, for real estate tax purposes. It takes a while. I would also argue that reassessment, which really isn't part of the home rule discussion, but I would argue that reassessment is necessary for economic development. Because the thing that businesses hate the worst is the fear. They have the fear of the unknown, and they have a fear that when there's reassessment, what's it going to do? Once we have reassessment, I mean, right now, if you come in and you build a building in Blair County, and you look at the tax rates, you know, I don't know what the total tax rate is with additional millage and capital millage and what the school district's got in the county, but it's a pretty high rate. It's an unbelievably high rate. And you're looking to build a business and say, well, don't worry about that. We're going to figure out, using our magic 8-ball, what it would have cost to build your building in 1958. And we're going to tax you at our high rate on that value. Just trust us. Who would do that? So, you know, I think that once we get past that, we'll have some more economic development. Once we, bit by bit, and one of the things that Joe talked about, and I didn't say specifically, with some of these people that have come in, you go to Philadelphia, you go to Detroit, you go to one of these other cities where you have bombed out blocks, and you have a developer who comes in and says, okay, I'll buy that block for, you know, nothing, and it's already basically dozed, so I will just start building it. We don't have bombed out blocks. We have blocks and blocks and blocks and blocks and blocks that have a nice home and a fallen down home and a bombed out home and a nice home. And therefore you can't redevelop an entire block like you can in many other cities. So there are obstacles to economic development. There are obstacles to everything that we do. But I'm the eternal optimist.
We had a group we brought in, I'm sorry we're over, but it's just worth hearing this story. We brought in a group from Philadelphia and did a tour with the idea that this is a group that does this. They buy up entire city blocks, and you know, a dozen city blocks, and come in and rehab, and they showed the plans on how they did it in Philly, and it was real exciting. We brought him in, dog and pony show, took him the whole way through the city, showed the worst neighborhoods, you know, here are some opportunities. Got back to City Hall and they said, when are you going to show us the bad stuff? They said, we can't work in this environment. I mean, you guys think you have problems that you don't have at the level we need for this to work. So it's a matter of perspective of, over the years, the blight problem is it's unacceptable to all of us, but it's not at the level of that kind of drastic infusion that you can get with the systems that those companies have developed.
Which highlights the fact that we don't have to do it ourselves.
Oh,
Our local Station Medical Center is a completely local development. And if we're going to do it, people from Philly and Pittsburgh aren't necessarily going to come in and do it.
I was in the inaugural leadership class of Leadership Blair County when somebody came in and proposed the idea of a medical mall to that group, and that person was looked at as sort of too much living in a utopia, and it would never work. And but ultimately it happened, and Dave Duncan was the guy that came to our group saying about the concept of a medical mall back in. So it can happen, and it did come to fruition, and it is a great thing, locally owned, but is that going to be enough to drag us out of all this? We're way late. Great discussion though, so we're not going to take additional public comment. We'll do media stand-up deal, you okay with one-on-ones, or do you want to do a group question real fast?
No, I'm on.
You are?
We got enough ammunition already.
Yeah. I think we should be good for the next couple of weeks.
That's why we do this,
So, the next meeting is when? Help me.
Monday, in a couple weeks.
Thanks. That's a big help.
Yeah, I'm here for you. Sure.
October seventh?
October the 7th, Monday.
I will.
It will be at 7 p.m.
All right, and,
You want to go to see if she can come to that?
all right,
I know.
She said she can't, but
Oh, she did, okay.
let's get her, let's follow through hopefully between now and then with DCED. Anybody with other thoughts on, but we gotta get this home rule studies section organized, so if
I
we all have
would-
homework, that's fine.
Yeah, okay. I'm just thinking I would like to hear from a development, maybe it's, I don't know whether it's ABCD Corp or maybe planning within the city about how they feel different forms of revenue, you know, because that's really what happens if we go to home rule, we change the model of revenue, how that affects development.
I would also like to hear from maybe a group of folks that have businesses in downtown.
I don't know who those people are.
They do
I
have.
have two.
Not yours.
We don't want to hear about it. It's conflict of
Rich,
interest.
you said you wanted to hear from Franny and.
Well, it may be.
All right, so
I don't know whether.
we are adjourned.